Weekly Download, a podcast about interesting games, industry news.
Brought to you by Big Games Machine.
Hello, welcome back to the Weekly Download, brought to you by Big Games Machine. I'm your host, Tom, returning after missing last week, and today I'm not joined by you again, Yaz, but our audience is joined by you again. So introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Yaz. I'm back again. Not to quote Eminem,
2 weeks
but...
in a row. I think you're the first person outside of me or Alex to do 2 weeks in a row. So
there you go. What can I say?
Congrats!
Thank
You're becoming a mainstay. But yes, back again. We've got some stories to run through today. We're going to be looking at a few bits and bobs across the last 7 days of the industry. So we'll be taking a look at the news that HoYoverse is set to invest up to $14.6 billion in in-house AI tools. It's a lot of money. We'll also be looking at even more money-related news, which is that Microsoft is set to pay $250 million to Activision Blizzard shareholders as part of a lawsuit. And then finally, just realized all three of today's stories are about money.
Yeah.
So I didn't even realize that until now.
Very finance-focused
But finally,
this week.
yeah, well, money in the news. But finally this week, we'll be looking at the story around one of Valnet's site, TheGamer, who allegedly, when we're seeing reports around this, they're now changing their payment system for freelancers to a per article session system rather than flat rates. So we'll be getting into that. We'll be getting into these two other stories in just a moment, but we'll be right back. Welcome back. Our first story this week is, of course, the news that HoYoverse is going to be investing around £14.6 billion in in-house AI tools. Now, this isn't just... I'm thinking immediately, this isn't just a very expensive version of ChatGPT. They're essentially going to be building a lot of their own infrastructure. So we're looking at GPU clusters, training systems, application architecture, all these fancy technical terms. NPCs are a really big focus too. These AI-powered NPCs, say that 10 times and keep stumbling over them like I have just done in the bit that you won't hear. They're designed to be more reactive and lifelike. I think we're seeing these kind of buzzwords around AI-powered NPCs a lot. And yeah, this is, I think, another example where we're seeing more publishers and developers looking to take AI stuff in-house, seeing a lot of investment into those areas. Krafton be making a lot of noise about it. And we're seeing things in the last few weeks that Ubisoft are using it a lot for experimentation. My first thought, and my question, I think, for you, Yaz, is my worry here is that, especially on the NPC side of things, I feel like this is really going to change the way that NPCs work in games. You know, historically, developers have and writers have been able to build quests and characters with NPCs that are very much everyone's getting the same experience, and you can really carefully manage what that looks like, and you can really tell a fixed story. Whereas if we're going to move into a situation where we're seeing a lot more of these AI-powered NPCs, what does that look like? You know, I know you're a writer. I'm not as good of a writer as you, but I like to write. Come on, and we both really value narrative and writing, and it feels I don't understand how these two things can mesh together and work.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's a really fine line they're going to have to tread. You know, there's a lot of backlash already in the community about AI generated things. For example, Krafton's Inzoi, that's not had good reception, and that is very blatantly using a lot of AI. And as a result, the NPCs and the gameplay doesn't feel unique, despite the fact that maybe internally it was uber efficient. I think AI can be used well, you know, especially for like hardware upgrades to make things more efficient on software side. But when it comes to the creative side, the assets of the game, the story behind it, that needs to still be very human driven. And that's what is going to push the sales.
Yeah, to me, Zelda is my favorite series. And so much of that, even I don't think Zelda is often the stories in the games can be quite weak, but there's so much lore and background to every version of that game you ever see, and that's also carefully pieced together, and then the fans go in and find stuff, and it's that, like any game, it's these shared experiences which I think are what make this form of entertainment so good, and so I think it's why people are so invested in it, is because we all have we might have a different experience with a game, but the thread lines of those stories and of those characters in particular tend to be the same. So the idea that one day we're going to have, not that I don't think Nintendo's a great example, because Nintendo's been quite strongly against this kind of stuff, but if we look at something like, if we're looking at HoYoverse with this Petite Planet, the idea that as a life sim, everyone's going to have a different experience with with the same characters, it just doesn't it doesn't sit right with me, and it will be interesting to see if if they are doing this, how the community reacts, because you bring up a great point about Inzoi, and that's something where there was a lot of backlash to parts of that, but we've not really seen too much of the AI powered NPC stuff, I don't think.
No.
Yet.
And
So
as you're
it's
talking
all
about
to
it
come.
now, like, for example, with Animal Crossing, right? A big part of it is that every villager has its own personality, and people have done tier rankings online for the villagers, for God's sake. Like, people get invested in characters and NPCs. And yeah, if it's not the same throughout, that does pose a bit of a weird situation, doesn't it? For me, like, I don't play any games that HoYoverse has done, but now that I know that they're investing more in AI, it probably makes me less likely to ever try one of their games in the future. And I wonder if that's going to have a knock-on effect in like other consumers as well.
Well, it's so divisive, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's whichever side you fall on it. I think in theory, something like this is like, it sounds amazing, I think, in theory, but it's do you need more choice here? Like, do you need every single character to be able to do a million different things?
Yeah.
Because I imagine there's definitely going to have to be, to think of like going to like play bowling, you've got like the side, like if you've got the barriers up, I think there has to be barriers here.
Yes.
Where characters can do anything within reason, but they can't completely go off and I know that Epic last year introduced an AI Darth Vader NPC, and there was a lot of problems with that because people were getting Darth Vader to say some very questionable things, which we won't go into. But yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. I think the last point that I want to touch on before we move on is that this is a lot of money.
It is.
£14.6 billion is hard to me, it's hard to see what is the return of investment on this? How is this a success? Because I think if you look at the flat amount of money, I don't see how these features or these uses in games that the consumers will see. Well, obviously you mentioned before things in the back end for efficiency. How much of this is going to be so beneficial for customers and for consumers that money does come back to them? Or is that even I don't know if that's the goal to make that money back, but
yeah,
I'm kind of thinking that's a lot of money to spend on.
Yeah.
On
and
stuff
is this going to result in like layoffs as well? I mean, we see it so often, but I feel like it's always one of those things where it's like short-term gains doesn't always result in long-term benefits. So definitely one to watch. I'm curious how they sort of define their success with this.
Looking at this story around Microsoft and Activision Blizzard, it kind of feels like we're in 2023 again, and we're talking about the acquisition of Activision and everything to do with that. But this story is kind of an offshoot of that. So Microsoft has agreed to pay $250 million, a lot of money, not quite 14.6 billion, to settle a lawsuit from Swedish pension fund AP7 regarding the acquisition of Activision Blizzard. The lawsuit claimed that Activision Blizzard CEO, I believe that was his title, Bobby Kotick, pushed through the sale at a lower price than they would have wished for and maybe below market value to avoid dealing with there was so much of these harassment allegations and a lot of investigations in 2023 into conduct at Activision Blizzard. I think something we have to say is that Microsoft is paying this money. Their own statements have said this isn't an admission of guilt about what's happened. This is essentially Microsoft saying, we don't want to drag this on. We don't want to deal with this anymore. So we want to avoid this continued litigation. Let's just end this now. To have this weird offshoot, and we're going to talk about Embracer, which feels like it's come out of nowhere, but Bobby Kotick's team, in response to this suit, claimed that the pension fund in question, AP7, they were working alongside Embracer Group to try and make Activision weaker and to stop Activision from being successful, which is some very ironic to have this spy story potentially happening when a new James Bond game is out this week. We're always on trend. But to very quickly give you this quote from the suit, this is from Bobby Kotick's team, which is that this Delaware lawsuit was apparently aimed to help pave the way for Embracer to increase its foothold in the California market at the expense of Activision. Embracer have come out and basically said, and again we'll quote, it's not involved in this, and that they, quote, do not need any help from a Swedish pension fund in competing with Activision, which it's fighting talk. I quite like that. But that's the context of what this story is. I think the big thing for me is that this feels like we can maybe stop talking about Bobby Kotick now. I think this is Microsoft looking and thinking, we can spend this money. It's a lot of money, but it's actually only less than 1% of the total cost of the merger. And is it worth paying that to clear this story and to stop the headlines appearing, I guess? What do you think?
It's a messy one, isn't it? This is very, very messy. I genuinely don't really know where I sit with this. I mean, I feel like this shouldn't have all happened in the first place, but there we go. Yeah, I mean, I think it's PR control. The bottom line of it, really, isn't it? They don't want to be tied to this anymore. They don't want their reputation to be damaged, so they pay the money and off they go. And for them, it's probably a splash in the water, like realistically speaking.
0.5% of the total 69 billion. If anyone needs reminding, that's what the acquisition of Activision cost. So I think you're definitely on the money. It feels like let's give them the money.
Yeah,
it's not. I'd love to be in a position where I can turn around and be like, $250 million. It's not that much, guys. Let's just.
But it's some higher up that did say, "Oh, this is nothing. This is peanuts. Just I'll sign it and let's." Yeah, which I don't know. It's a bit of a grey area, isn't it? I don't really like the outcome of this.
Well, we've seen. There was, if we're looking at these stories around the harassment allegations, which we saw in the past, a lot of those were settled in 2023 and in 2024. So this feels, for me, I think you can't really spin it and be like, oh, this is about like taking it to Bobby Kotick and making him pay for these alleged things that have happened. It's just kind of, we can, it's a pension fund. Pension funds are there to make money for the people who invest into them. So it does all feel very murky. But I think that Microsoft will be glad that this is done. It's another. We keep seeing, since Asha Sharma has come in and taken over Microsoft, she's continuing, whether she's responsible for things like this or not. Her reign has kept bringing up these. I don't necessarily think this is a positive story for Microsoft, but I think it's definitely good news for them because it does allow them to say, that was then, this is now, we're done with this. The Activision Blizzard of Microsoft isn't the Activision Blizzard of Bobby Kotick. I just hope, and I'm sure you feel the same, I just hope that those allegations have come in the past, if there's some truth to what has been claimed, you have to hope that those lessons have been learned, and by bringing things under Microsoft that things are better, because the industry does not need these kind of stories. And there's so much money that's being passed around because of these things that, as you said, never should have happened in the first place. So yeah,
it definitely feels like Xbox in particular, with all its stuff it's been doing lately with the new leadership and stuff. I think they're just trying to have a clean slate on everything, new name, new leadership team, this as well. Just, trying to wipe it all, start again if they can.
Yeah, it's something that Alex spoke about a few times where we've looked at Xbox stories in the past few months, and almost feels like, from the outside, a bit like Phil Spencer was. Maybe some of these things that have been going on in the last few months were in the works anyway before Phil Spencer departed, but Xbox and Microsoft were like, if we just hold this for a little bit, we can make everyone love our new leadership team.
Yes.
And they can, as you said, it feels like they've got a fresh slate. They are doing good things. Obviously this isn't necessarily a good thing, but I think as we've said, it's about pushing something out of the way, and it's about video games. Like, we don't need these kind of things being stories. We don't need to see money that could have been used to make some very good games instead having to go into lawsuits because of acquisitions and mergers and things that, for players and for us, we might be industry professionals, but we're gamers before anything else. We want to see conversations about games. So I think, unless you have any closing thoughts, we'll wrap this one, and then we'll come back and we'll be back in a moment. And we are back with our third and final major story of the day. Before we get down into the rundown, which will be a lot more fun, I promise you, Yaz has picked out a great story this week as well, which I'm excited to look at. But before we do that, we'll take a look at this story we've seen this week that is around Valnet. They're the parent company of a lot of sites, TheGamer, GameRant, Polygon now. We're seeing reports that TheGamer, so staff at TheGamer, are now being moved into a new payment system, which is essentially tying their wages, the income they make from their writing. Rather than receiving flat rates, they're now going to receive money based on article sessions, which is views. Writers will reportedly earn $5 per 1,000 views, while editors will earn $3 per 1,000 views. Under the contract that these writers will be working under, this new contract, if an article doesn't hit the 1,000 session view threshold within 15 days, as we understand, they will earn nothing for the time put into writing the article, which, you can tell from Yaz's face, not happy about this. Neither am I. Some staff who have spoken to reporters about this think that this might be an attempt to initiate soft layoffs by essentially making the conditions that they're working in so bad, and by making the money they're earning so low that people just quit on their own. Management, on the other side, they don't think that it's like this. They believe it's an exciting performance-based bonus system, though we're both writers to some degree, but if you're not getting a guaranteed flat rate for what you're writing, that can't be a bonus. That, to me, I feel like if someone turned around to you, Yaz, and was like, "Oh, if you write this byline, I'll maybe, if loads of people look at it, I'll give you some bonus money," and then you're like, "Oh, so what am I getting for doing it in the first place?" And they're like, "Oh, no, that's how the bonus works."
This gives me the vibe that some sales manager has made this decision and wants to encourage this like competitiveness of, maybe if they know they'll get paid more for more sessions, they'll do better. It'll really drive them. But obviously the people creating the content see the other side and are like, no, it won't. This is awful. At least, that's how I see it.
I think what you're saying, obviously, that's not your position, but that makes sense for if an executive is thinking like that, that kind of makes sense if there is a flat rate in there. If you are encouraging people, I've freelanced for Valnet before, so I'm going to be careful with what I say. Not that I think it matters because it's been 5-6 years, but if you're encouraging freelancers to go out and try and find trending topics and stories to write about, and there's an incentive to do that because you'll get paid more to do it, that makes sense. But if there's no guarantee that, we both know how long it can take to write good, proper pieces of work. It doesn't have to be journalism. If you're writing bylines, if you're writing press releases, if you're writing pitches, that takes time. And the idea of doing that and publishing it, and there's no guarantee that you even get anything for it, it's ludicrous. And I think my concern as someone who works in PR and works with a lot of indie games is that if a writer knows they're only going to get paid for people looking at the page, there's zero incentive to cover anything that isn't a massive new release, a major live service game, or I don't mean to be mean to anyone who does this kind of content, but this more low quality listicle style of, and the stuff that I used to write because we were talking about earlier, but the kind of, who's the best version of this character, or the top 10 Switch games that have got a Mario Easter egg, or there's no incentive to do anything that's not that kind of content because you're clearly not going to get paid for it.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's free labor, essentially, is what they're trying to get at here. And I think that is terrible. And I know that writers are currently in a revolt around it, and fair play to them. I would be exactly the same as well. I think you're right. This is definitely a soft launch for people quitting, moving on, making people quit without having to make them redundant. 'Cause it's always easier when the employee quits than being fired or redundancy. I just know that if I was in this situation, I'd be looking to move on straight away. I think it's but
the problem is we've seen this race to the bottom for games media and games journalism for quite a few years now. As someone who was in that position, I feel more offended by this than I do by what we've seen recently with websites being acquired and then turned into AI generated content mills. I find that this upsets and angers me more because it feels like that it's an attempt to kind of have your cake and I can't think what's the saying, to eat your cake and have your cake and eat it. I can't think what the saying is.
Take your cake and eat it or something. Yeah.
Yeah,
I know what you mean. I agree with you.
It's like, we've still got human writers, so that's good. But if your article gets 800 views, you're not going to get anything for it. So
what if someone gets 999 views?
Well, you get nothing. But even then, if you get 1,000, you only get $5, which
pennies,
I think is about.
Like...
I'm trying to think what that is in pounds for. Obviously, us in the UK, it's maybe like £4. I don't think it's.
It's £3.73.
£3.73. So if if you spend, just the idea if you spend an hour putting an article together, and I think that's ridiculously quick. The idea of here's a headline, here's a story, write about it, and the idea that you can do that in an hour is a bit unrealistic, and you might earn $5 for that. But obviously the ceiling is that you might earn loads, but then the reality is there's only so many views to go around on a day.
Yeah, like not every piece is going to be a viral hit, And it definitely detracts from that evergreen content as well, which I think is really important. You were saying, they would lean in towards the trending stuff all the time. Well, what about the evergreen stuff that's actually still really important to look at and, regular loyal viewers and readers will expect to see regularly. So messy
I
again.
Don't know. I mean, let's see. I think, as you said, there's definitely we're aware of the fact that there's pushback against this. So, but it has been implemented. We'll see how it goes. If it kicks up, if there's enough of a PR storm, I guess, against this, and people are really unhappy, then maybe we'll see things change. I'm very cynical. I think that a lot of consumers and readers of these sites don't really care about the people behind them. They just want the content. But I think that, I hope that there's more to this story, and if there is, we'll definitely talk about it, because with our work, these relationships are really important to us with journalists, and we want to make sure that everyone's getting what they deserve, and this feels like it's not going to do that. So we'll 100%. See. But shall we break away, and when we come back, we'll speak about some happier things.
How
does that sound to you?
That's it.
Welcome back to the Rapid Rundown. Why are we laughing, you're wondering? It's because Yaz has just reminded me of the fact that I'm there going, we've got some really happy stories. We do. Well, we have one really happy one. We have one that's quite funny. And then the first one is around Destiny 2, and it's not too happy. Reportedly, most of Bungie's staff who are working on Destiny 2 didn't even know that active development was going to end until it went public. We keep seeing these kind of things where people find out about layoffs, where people find out about studio situations through the media. And again, we work in PR. I don't get how this is happening. I don't understand how there's not memos going around internally days ahead of time. And I understand perhaps there's a concern about leaks, but the idea that people at Bungie who might have spent a decade working on the Destiny series and they log into Blue Sky or they go on IGN and then they're tapping their like coworker on the shoulder and being like, we're not doing this anymore?
Yeah.
Doesn't feel great. Are you a Destiny player yourself, or?
I'm not, no. So I've been interested a few times. I've heard great things about it, but never actually played it myself. Not actually heard of
Do you want to
Bungie
start
before
now?
either. Do I want to start
Do you
now?
want-
Probably not. And you hear a
I
lot
can't wait to
about...
see what comes next. Well,
I think redundancies are coming next. And that puts me off. Again, you hear about these bad things. You hear about AI replacing jobs. You hear about redundancies. You hear about reduced budgets, yada, yada, yada. And it just puts me off wanting to try these studios' games. Like, it just creates a really bad brand impression. And I won't be the only one. I think there'll be a lot of community lashback. So
yeah,
we'll
it's
see.
not.
Flashback?
It's
Backlash?
not. And they'll be flashing back to the good times, I'm
Well,
sure,
yes,
of when they were still getting content. But yeah, we'll a little teaser, I guess, for next week. We've got a few members of the team who are very much big Destiny fans, and next week we'll be having a slightly different episode. We're going to do a special episode which will be completely on Destiny 2. Won't be exploring the game necessarily, but a lot of it will be, as we've said, the kind of as PR people, it'll be our take on how Bungie and Sony have handled this, and what they've done right, what they've done wrong. So stay tuned for that. But next story, Yaz, this is the one that we promised everyone that was really good. So I'm gonna hand over the microphone and say, tell us about Paralives, please. Give us some joy.
Life simulation fans rejoice. Paralives came out on Monday. Very long anticipated and awaited from a lovely little indie studio. I think they've got about 15 people. I actually saw a TikTok I saw a TikTok the other day of them literally pressing publish on their game, and they were all whooping in the office. It was so cute. But it's done very well. Within the first 8 hours of the game coming out, it sold 250,000 copies. It currently has a very positive rating on Steam. Out of the nearly 5,000 online reviews, a good 85% of them are positive. And the game's currently peaked at about almost 80k players.
It's a good start.
Yeah, this genre has been crying out for more games because The Sims 4 has been a 11-year disappointment that keeps demanding money from its fans. Inzoi, like, at the start did really well, and they were like, yeah, we've sold 1 million copies in a week. But then actually you look into the details and about 300,000 of those copies were refunded. So
that's a lot. Have you played this? Have you played this one yet?
It's on my wish list for tomorrow when we get paid.
Very nice. Very nice.
But the good thing with Paralives is there'll be no DLC. All updates to the game, all new content that is added will be added for free for everyone that owns it. It's currently 10% off right now, and so it's going to be like the lowest price it'll ever be. It is early access, which means as time goes on and they add more, like, the price will go up. But it's done so well to kick off, their launch, and we needed it. The genre needed it.
I was gonna say it feels like it's always been everyone plays Sims, but they kind of play it begrudgingly. Is the impression I get from the outside. So it's great to see more competition. I think we need more competition for those kind of those genres where there's kind of one big tentpole game and everyone just floods back to it. And you'd like to hope if they continue to work hard, continue to add new features and content and all these other things that the players will keep with it. And I think it's one of those situations where you think the studio can help the fan base and the fan base can help the studio. And it might never be able to compete with Sims right up there, but it's always good to have more options. And, I love a good indie studio story. I saw that video. I think I saw it on Instagram, and I'm a big fan of I don't know what the genre is, but the videos of developers pressing the green button on Steam and celebrating. So great to see, and I hope that this continues to do well.
Yes.
Our last story for the rundown today is about a heist. It's about a heist. It's about Pokemon. That's the only reason why I wore my Singapore Airport Pokemon shirt today.
You're dressed for the occasion.
Yeah, I've got to. Although I've not been involved in this heist, for the record. 2 Japanese men have been arrested over an alleged $213,000 Pokemon card heist targeting a delivery vehicle. My first thought was the Pokemon scalpers have stepped it up.
Yes.
You know, we're not just waiting at the machines anymore. We're not just stealing the cards from 10-year-old Timmy who wants to get his first Pokemon deck from the machine. We're now going straight to the source and taking them from the delivery vehicle.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's this Pokemon card craze. From what I can see, it's beginning to die down a bit in terms of the financial side. You know, a lot of the prices of the more lucrative cards and boxes and stuff are starting to go down. But the fact that people are even doing this in the first place is just, you know, it's crazy. I say this as there's various Pokemon things all around me.
Mm-hmm.
It's a kid's game.
It is.
Let's just take a step back, and you know, Team Rocket are the bad guys in Pokemon. We don't want to be copying them. Let's not try to steal any Pokemon cards or anything for that matter.
This isn't like a one-off incident either. You know, I think, especially in Japan, a lot of this happens. It's just baffling. Like Pokemon cards, literally a piece of card with something printed on it is creating this much drama, and yeah, it's just crazy. Like, out of all the things you could choose to do a heist on as well, Pokemon cards.
But they're worth so much. This is what's it is crazy, but then the value of them is crazy as well. So
not anymore because they got caught.
Well, yeah. Or maybe, I don't know. We don't know if they got away with some of the cards though. Maybe the cards are all hidden somewhere, waiting for them to think if they've hidden them and then they get out. You know, if they go to prison, then they get out one day. How much might they? Like in 20 years' time, it's like we've got a sealed box of the Mega Rising or whatever set it is. But I think, yeah, don't steal Pokemon cards. That's probably where the life lesson will end today's episode.
The moral of the story, children: don't steal Pokemon cards.
The moral of the story: tell developers that you're ending development on the game they're working on.
Yes.
Support Paralives.
Yes.
And don't steal Pokemon cards. That feels like a pretty good trifecta. And that is it for another weekly download with a lovely moral message at the end. As always, if you want to read more about these stories, you'll find them all. I'm like kind of pointing downwards. If you're listening, you won't see that. They're all in the description, whether you are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, if you're watching on YouTube. All of the stories will be linked below. I always recommend you go and give them a read, form your own takes, form your own opinions. And if you've enjoyed listening to Yaz and I have a bit of a waffle about some of the stories of the last 7 days, give us a like. Be sure to subscribe wherever you're listening or watching. And if you'd like to read the weekly download, you can do so via LinkedIn. We cover some of the same stories, but we cover a lot more. You get a lot more detail in there. That's every week, come rain or very hot shine. If you're in the UK, again, we're British. We have to talk about the weather, and that's kind of all the plugs. So Yaz, I want to say thank you for joining me. I know this wasn't your debut, but it's nice to come away for a week and come back. I said to you earlier this week, I was like, do you want to come on again? And you were like, yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me.
Get me on.
Always happy to come on.
Yeah, neither of us will be here next week, though, I don't think.
No.
So you won't see us again. But thank you for joining me. Thank you for listening. And we'll see you all next time.
Take care, guys.